the rebels in the world stand up. If you're a rebel on the grind, you don't care what they mind.
Welcome to the Brave Podcast. I'm your host, Connie Jacob, and I wanted to come on here today and just share with you some real vulnerable experiences that I think we can all relate to. The premise of this podcast episode is this idea of when you're not aligned with yourself and with what you are meant to do here on this earth and who you're connecting with, who you are as a person, you're going to feel all kinds of dysregulation. You're going to feel chaotic in your life. And to be honest, it's interesting. That's exactly how I have felt lately. In the last few weeks, especially, woken up just hating on myself, just thinking, oh, like you're so annoying, or going through some of my journal entries and seeing the words that I have been hiding in my heart and thinking in my head about who I am, and why don't you just sit down and stop doing things, stop going on your podcast. Do you think people really want to hear from you? Like all these things. And I want to bring this to the surface because the more I talk to women out there, and the more I talk to people who are leading something. So now let me just define leadership for you. If you're a mom, you're a leader. If you're a teacher, you're a leader. If you are leading somebody else in any capacity, you're a leader. And when you're leading anybody or leading something, it feels like a lot of pressure. And if you're somebody who is a visionary like myself, who dreams of making a difference in the world, not out of pressure, but out of this compelling that it can't just stay this way. There needs to be something different. A lot of the things that I do and create in education and in homes is out of a great dissatisfaction with the way things are and an imagination of what things can be. But being somebody in that place, they call it a tall poppy, somebody who's willing to stand up, stand out of the crowd, and show yourself and get out there and try to advocate for these things. How many of you know that those tall poppies, some people try to push them down, but sometimes it's not other people who are pushing the tall poppy down. It's yourself. I am my own worst enemy. And I want to give you a key when you fall into these cycles of really negative self-talk, when you fall into these cycles of even self-hatred, thoughts that make you feel paralyzed in moving forward in who you are. This is something that's normal. I just want to normalize it. These, whenever I now have thoughts of, oh, Connie, like just thoughts of why don't you just give up? Nobody wants to hear from you. You're so annoying. I listen sometimes to my podcasts, and I think everybody hates their own voice, but I really do. I don't like my own voice because it doesn't sound the way you're hearing my voice doesn't sound the way my voice sounds to me. So when I hear it back, I'm like, oh, who wants to listen to that? And it could paralyze me. It could make me feel like, don't show up. Stop advocating. Why don't you just work at Starbucks? Doesn't that just sound so appealing? And if you're a leader, if you're somebody who's leading change, you just laughed at that probably because that sounds so appealing. If you're somebody who's making a difference in somebody else's life, you're pouring yourself out. But I want to give you a tool today to bring you back and to notice when you fall into these cycles of negative self-talk. It usually means you're overwhelmed, you've taken on too much, it's not simple enough, and you're misaligned. Now, let me just clarify all that I just said. I'm not saying that if you ever have negative self-talk, that all of those things are in place and that you're completely misaligned. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is it's probably too complicated. You're taking on problems that aren't yours. You're trying to solve them in ways that aren't you, or it's become too complicated. It's not simple enough anymore. And in our world, we overcomplicate everything. We're not living from our hearts anymore. We're living from systems. And so what we want to do is we want to come out of a system way of thinking, and we want to come into an aligned way of thinking. So what feels natural to you? There was a phrase that went through my head a little while ago. You're only a delight when you're doing things right. You're only a delight when you're doing things right. And I mean, how many of us can relate to that? That in our childhoods, the only time that we were a delight to the adults around us when we were behaving, when we were doing what we were supposed to. As we grow into adults, we take that belief system with us. I'm only a delight when I'm doing things right. And so we work so hard at trying to be what everybody else wants us to be rather than being who we are. We take that into our adulthood and we settle, we tolerate too many things that we don't need to be tolerating. So we settle for what's less, we settle for what's safe. We settle for relationships that are, well, I guess that's as good as it can get for me. We settle and we tolerate things. We tolerate things in our home that we would have never dreamed of tolerating when we were kids. We tolerate relationships. We tolerate work that just doesn't feel meaningful to us. One of the best books I ever read on depression was Lost Connections by Johann Hari. I have mentioned this many times. This is my go-to book. And one of the reasons for depression is this lost connection with purpose, lost connection of meaningful people in our lives, lost connection with meaningful work. When we don't have connection to ourselves, we feel depressed. We feel heavy. Everything feels hard. And instead of looking at depression or those feelings of, oh, this feels really hard, this is overwhelming, instead of thinking of it as a negative, see it as a gauge on your car, like your oil light or your gas light. Oh, that's very helpful. Those lights, I am so grateful. I'm so grateful for tire lights that tell me that I need to focus on putting some air in my tires because now it's solvable. That's what these emotions are for. They're helpful. And whenever you get into a pattern of negative self-talk, it means that you've kind of come off the path of being aligned with who you are. And so what does that look like? Well, let me just maybe share a little bit about what that looks like for me. Whenever I feel a shift coming in my life where I need to let go of some things, I will feel like I'm not good enough. That's my gauge on my car. Not good enough, not good enough, not good enough. It tells me that there's belief systems that have been created by me just trying to go through the motions and perform, trying to be a delight, trying to be responsible, trying to do the right things. This is distracting me from who I really am and what I really am meant to do. So I started this dance class, which I absolutely love. I started it in my community, and I've worked in dance for 25 years, worked mixing my mental health and resilience skills and bringing people together and learning how to be bravely connected to one another through dance. I've done this for 25 years. It's obviously evolved. Day one, I didn't have what I have right now, but over time, it's become just a part of me. Doing this dance class is effortless for me. It is so aligned with who I am. And the results of people when they come, it's very evident that they are experiencing that ease. Now, I'm not saying that everything we're meant to do will be easy. That is far from the truth. But there's an ease. There's a resting state of feeling, this is me. This is it. When you don't feel those things, you have a choice. You could either continue to go forward in trying to make things work, trying to feel delightful, trying to feel that sense of authenticity, which will never feel authentic, will always feel divided. And so when you feel divided, pay attention. And here's the thing, one of the things that I'm realizing as I come closer to turning 50 is that time is so short. Why would I ever spend so much time trying to make something work in my life that isn't aligned to me? Time is way too short. And so what if I put that same amount of effort into something that brings me life, but brings other people life too? It takes an incredible amount of bravery to let go of something that you think everybody is expecting you to carry. Takes an incredible amount of bravery. So this time last year, I was going to be resigning from my job. I didn't know that. I resigned in August. But this time last year, I remember being in this place in August where I felt that I needed to resign from my job. Now, you have to understand, it wasn't just a job for me. This was an investment. I was an investor in the company. I loved the company. I loved the people. And yet there was a part of me that was just feeling that shift, that light was on my dashboard, but I didn't want to listen to it because being safe sounded great. No, I can't step out and do things that I'm feeling I'm supposed to do. My husband was asking me, hey, we're building this renovation company. I need you. Would you be willing to come full time and invest in our renovation company with me? Now, my hard answer is yes, but my head answer is all the reasons why that's a really dumb idea. Being safe, understand that your brain, your circuitry in your brain will want you to stay safe. And it will give you all the reasons to stay misaligned and to keep performing and keep on that hamster wheel of just doing things the way it's always done. And it was interesting. I did end up resigning, and it wasn't exactly the smoothest transition. I made a lot of mistakes. Transitions are not easy. So I'm not going to lie to you and say, just follow your dreams, follow your heart, stay aligned, and everything will work out. I actually, that is not true. Some things, 100% will feel so good. Other things, it will be hard, but it will be worth it. It will be worth it. You being true to what you feel you need to do, the reason why so many of us suffer, the reason why our kids are suffering and our families don't feel vibrant is because we're all in this hamster wheel of I have to, I should. And this, how does you staying aligned work with your family's mental health? It's everything. Have you ever heard this statement? Happy wife, happy life. Well, it's true with anyone in the home. When somebody in your home is feeling misaligned, it will ripple into everybody in that home. Now, can we live fully aligned all the time? I don't know if that's realistic, but I do believe that we have agency over our lives. And what I'm asking you to do in this podcast is not make any radical decisions. But what I am asking you to do is pay attention to your emotional warning signals. Pay attention to the speech that comes out of your mouth and just notice it. Notice the feelings of overwhelm. Notice how it's impacting your relationships. Notice what it's doing to you on the inside. Pay attention to the dashboard. That's what I'm asking you to do. That feels like a brave step, but it's not an overwhelming step. Start to pay attention to it. And then start to figure out, what am I going to do about this? Now, when I have made any kinds of transition, I don't just say, okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm going to go from this to this. I'm moving. I'm not asking for you to make any drastic decisions. These things take time. But I will say that as I've looked past the last year, who I was last August and my journal entries last August, compared to the journal entries I have today, I'm so glad I took the risk. I'm so glad I didn't just stay safe. And I want to prep you in the fall, I'm going to be launching something called the Women's Dream Academy. This is specifically for women who don't want to stay where they are, but they don't know how to step forward. So that's coming. I'm not going to tell you much more about that right now. But one of the reasons why women who have a dream inside of them or on my heart is because when you don't live aligned with who you are, it affects your mental health, it affects your emotional health, and it affects your relationships. And that's what I really care about. I care about how you feel in your relationships because at the end of the day, When you wake up in the morning, you deserve to have a life that you're proud of. You deserve to have a family where you all feel like you come alive when you're at home. You deserve that. That is your birthright as a human. And what we need sometimes are people to come alongside us to help us create those things. And so that's why I do what I do. That's why I show up here on the podcast. That's why I listen intently to those negative self-talk and those negative beliefs that come out of my mouth that say, why are you even trying? You're so annoying. I shut those voices down. I listen to them and I say, okay, clearly there's a misalignment here. There's some kind of overwhelm. What am I going to do with that? And so that brings me back to my attune in process. My attune in process is, what is my resting emotional state? Overwhelmed, too much, feels heavy. What does that emotion sound like as a sentence? Feels like you're so annoying. Nobody likes you. Everybody's just always thinking like, oh, there she is again. Why does she think she's so great? And the actions that come out is now I'm pushing to do the things that I know I'm supposed to do, or I want to go work at Starbucks and just become anonymous. I pay attention to that. What do you do with your attune in process? That attune in process is meant to now guide what could come next. The acknowledgement is the first step, but it's not the only step. The next step is to figure out, now, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Now, sometimes you can't do anything that day or that week or even that month, but what can you do? And so I want to give you this other tool that I use that I got from Certified Flourishing Coach, which is where I'm certified from as a coach. It's this list of listing out what you can control and what you can't control. As soon as you name it, you tame it. As soon as you name it, you get to write the story. But until you name it, it's dominating your subconscious mind that's dictated now by emotions that feel out of control, leading to behaviors that you're like, what? Where's that coming from? That's where it's coming from. It's coming from these things that are just sitting there in your soul. And until you name it, it's got control over you. So, listing out everything that you can control. Well, what can I control right now? Well, for me, I can control what I do in my day. As an entrepreneur, nobody tells me what time I need to do anything. And so if I'm ever overwhelmed, I'm like, well, I created that. So how can I create a new schedule for myself that doesn't feel overwhelming? I also can control what I say yes to and what I say no to. I can control the kind of atmosphere I have in my house. I can control, just list them all out. But then, of course, there's uncontrollables. I can't control the economy. I can't control the government. I can't control my children. I can't control my husband. I can't control other people. Now, everything, once you have those two lists, so you have a controllable list, things that you can control, and things that you are not in control of. Every controllable needs an action step. So everything that I can control, my schedule, what am I going to do? Okay, well, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to reevaluate everything that I'm doing. And I'm going to pull back and I'm going to make everything simple. I'm going to simplify. That's what I can do. That's my action step. And I would encourage you to just start with one controllable and one action step. Okay. Every uncontrollable needs a coping plan. So I can't control my husband. My husband, right now, we are in the midst of many renovations. It's summer and people love renovating in the summer. And so he is pretty tired. Well, I can't control the fact of how tired he is. How am I going to cope with that? Well, I'm going to remind myself, just listen, be a support, be his anchor, be someone who encourages him. Those things are the ways that I can cope with what I can't control, which is his own inner world. That's his responsibility, not mine. And so I hope that that helps as I share how I am working those things out for you. Pay attention to your dashboard. The more you go on not feeling aligned with who you are as a person, I call that bringing myself closer. Bringing myself closer. Who am I? The more you don't feel aligned with who you are, the more you're going to be dissatisfied in your life and in your relationships. Tuning in, naming your emotions, calling out those thoughts, allowing them to come into your conscious mind so that now you can deal with them, and figuring out what your controllables and your uncontrollables are will allow you to make some really brave decisions. The hardest decisions of our life are often the ones that we are needing to make. Are you brave enough to make brave decisions to live the life that you have always dreamed of? What do you dream of your life being? And how can you reverse engineer how you can create that life? Because your life is worth creating. You have the power to create your life the way you dream of. And what you dream for your life is probably what you're destined to do. And if you struggle with dreaming for your life and what that needs to look like, let's talk. I love helping women figure out how they're going to become aligned with who they really are. Let's chat. And in the meantime, keep being brave.
All the rebels in the world